orbit.
今ご紹介いただきました長谷川Sukehiroです。Hello everybody. My name is Sukehiro Hasegawa. I went to ICU graduate school almost 60 years ago. And then, after graduation from ICU, I went to the United Nations and started working for the UN for the next 37 years. First, my assignment was to help developing countries such as Nepal, Indonesia, and South Pacific Island countries, where I spent about 15 years helping them to develop their countries and the people. Since then, I also spent about 10, 12 years in the peace building of the war-torn countries, such as Cambodia, Somalia, Rwanda, and Timor-Leste. Today, I would like to share with you my experience and what I learned from all these countries about the United Nations, what it can do and what it cannot do, and to invite you to join me in how to change the United Nations so that United Nations will become the international global organizations of not just the sovereign states, but of the peoples around the world, as the Charter of the United Nations says in its preamble. In my 37 years in the United Nations, I have learned a lot of experience, but most dramatic one was those in Cambodia and Rwanda. I was officer responsible in New York headquarters for Cambodia and other countries. But do you remember, if you are old enough, United Nations did nothing while 2 million people were killed by their own government. And then, of course, Rwanda, where I served as the United Nations resident coordinator and the UNDP resident representatives. Shortly after the genocide that took place from April to July 1994, within this 3 months, as many as 1 million people were killed in their own tribal and ethnic warfares. United Nations withdrew its forces and could not intervene and stop the killings. Upon my own assumption of the UN positions, the new government asked me to go to the church where as many as 200 people were massacred and left unattended. If you get close to 400 meters to the church, I could not almost breathe because of the smell. It was a genocide, it was a tragedy that I felt that the international community, particularly United Nations, should be able to stop this kind of things to happen. Now, this is a failure, but I was then assigned to East Timor. In this East Timor, as the next picture shows, that it was a success story, that we are able to work together with the government and be able to restore the conflict, armed struggles, and also help them to build the peace, but also nation building that we experienced in Timor-Leste. We trained the police forces. We helped the communities to gain their self-confidence and ownership to restore their own country and the society. So we have, in fact, success stories as much as failed stories. Let's look at it now, what is happening. As next slide shows, that we are in a stage of need for the UN Security Council. The reason why we are unable to stay in the countries in a conflict is mainly because of the power struggle among the major members of the United Nations. United States, China, we used to call it the Soviet Union, but Russia. Look at now in Ukraine and Gaza and Sudan, people continue to die while these major powers, they argue endlessly at the Security Council to make sure that their own national power will prevail in the international community, while millions of people continue to die in despair. Therefore, my proposal is to make the United Nations first the Security Council, where I reported 4 times. The Security Council should be reformed to become more representative of the international community we serve. United Nations started with 54 countries. Now we have 193 countries, almost 4 times. Yet the number of seats in the Security Council will remain only 15 seats. Many discussions took place during the last 20 years to reform the United Nations. But do you know why they cannot do so? The main reason for this is that all members of the United Nations, including Japan, care for their own national and state interest. Japan, for example, dreams of gaining the permanent seat in the Security Council. It was something which Japan deserved and possible 20 years ago when I was in the United Nations, where Japan was the second biggest economic power and paid almost as much as United States in the payment of its contribution. But now, Japan's role, Japan's power in the economic, financial terms has declined, and that we are now paying only 7% of the United Nations budget. While the China started 20 years ago from 1%, it's now 20%. It has been reversed. But Japan continues to dream that it is the major power that deserves permanent Security Council seat. I think we should look at it from the point of view of the international community and the United Nations and how we can, in fact, help. Make it Security Council more representative, accountable, and has a credibility. Yes, we can take veto power away, and we can, and this is my proposal, to make re-electable 10 additional seats, which should be elected. And Japan has a good chance to do so. Now, apart from the Security Council reform, that we have to reform the General Assembly. General Assembly has to be strengthened, and that we should create the Parliamentary Assembly of the United Nations, where the people will be represented, as we have now in Europe. Europe has a European Council, where the people are represented. And we should also strengthen International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. These institutions should be strengthened, and that their power should be respected. Apart from this, we have to look at conceptually important thing is what we have done in Japan through Meiji Restoration. We can go over these finance things, but Meiji Restoration is important. As you remember, that Japan consisted of 160 Hans, or the samurai dynasty, all over Japan. And the Tokugawa crown was one of them. Yes, was a major power as the United States is now. But they decided, when there was a Kurobune, that black ship, the external threat to Japan, all these samurai dynasties were united, and they achieved through Meiji Restoration one single central government. Samurais gave up their sword, and all the people are given a right to education and health care. This unification of Japan modernized institutions, and we have now very stable, safe society. I would like to see very much that many of you, after I joined the United Nations, after my study at the ICU nearly 60 years ago, I worked in the United Nations. Perhaps our state-centered, what we call Westphalian system, still remains. Perhaps what we need is you, as Mr. Hashimoto mentioned previously, with your aspiration and the leadership. Join the Japanese government, change the policy of Japan. Think not just Japan's interest, but think the interest of the global community. As in the Meiji Restoration, you recall these people, 30 young people, they contributed to the Meiji Restoration. Many of them died. But some who remained, such as Okubo Toshimitsu, after the death of Saigo Takamori, he played a major role in the central government until he was also assassinated. But thanks to these young people, who are not the daimyos, but young samurais and others, they took their role and modernized Japan into a central government. I think it is now the time that some of you join the government of Japan. Well, you can join the UN too, but you can, in fact, transform the governance structure of the United Nations so that international community as a whole can remain safe and stable under the uniform rule of law. Thank you very much.